Hey, Scott Austin here. What I'm going to do is going to walk through your website for a little bit in preparation for our meeting, just so that you get some time to absorb some of my feedback before we talk, because I'm going to have a lot of it for you, right? And some of that may be jarring if I dump it all in you once. So give you the video ahead of time. You can watch it once or twice and think about things. So, and this is going to ramble because I've been looking at your store for like 4 minutes. And I said, I'm just going to go straight to the video. So, I may jump around a little bit. So the first thing is I'm not a fan of your theme. And the big reason for that is, themes are different and there's nothing wrong with difference. And there's no right or wrong in a lot of those things. But one of the things I always say is do not use a theme from, outside of the Shopify theme store, with the exception of Flex and Turbo, which are my favorite themes. And here I can, I figured out that you're using the Calais theme, which is on, Theme Forest or Envanto, and, $89. And I always say, you get what you pay for. And the reason I say that is to get into the Shopify App Store, there's a bunch of hoops that a theme developer has to walk through. So things are done in a standardized way. They're tested, they integrate, yada, yada, yada. When you find a theme on a theme store like this, there's no guarantees of that consistency, of conformity, of following the rules and standards set by Shopify. So, a lot of these themes look pretty good and flashy, but when you get under the covers, they can be difficult, right? And like your theme was doing a lot of things that I'm not a fan of, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And that's what made me see. I was like, "What theme are they using?" And I to be very honest, like I was very disappointed when I realized, oh, this is a theme from outside of the theme store. Like I would not work on this theme, right? If you hired me, like I wouldn't work on this theme because I don't know how it's built. And this, don't get me wrong, this could be a really well developed theme, professionally done, and all that kind of stuff. And then it's not that big of a deal. But it also could be the exact opposite. It could be a bunch of amateurs not doing things right, doing a bunch of shortcuts and hacking things through. And what that does is it makes it challenging to, do customizations to the theme or to integrate apps and all those kind of things. And like the app that I use, which is Flex, which costs like $450 or something, it may take me 5 hours to figure out how to get Klaviyo working with this theme. And that's the cost of Flex. And I know how to make, Klaviyo work with Flex in literally 10 minutes kind of thing. So, and I'm, exaggerating to prove a point there. But the first point is I would not use this theme. Now, that said, you've already built out the theme. So I'm going to make the assumption that changing the theme is not desirable at this time. So I'm going to now critique the way that this theme is developed. But my first point is I wouldn't have started with this theme. Right? And, a couple of reasons for that is, there's my philosophy on a Shopify store is assume your customer is, and I always use the soccer mom example, which may not be your target audience, but just stick with that for a second. Assume your audience is, your customer in the store today trying to make a decision is a soccer mom driving her minivan with 4 kids in the back screaming, and she's trying to make a choice on what rod and reel to buy while driving or at an intersection, right? In other words, a lot of people build a website assuming they have the undivided attention of their customer, and the customer is willing to work with the shortcomings of the site to get to the conclusion they want to get to. When I believe, and I build a site with the exact opposite strategy in mind, I assume that anything that's confusing just means that customer leaves and goes elsewhere, right? So this site, and it's a lot of the things that are just built into the theme, to me, are overly complex or overly flashy, right? So when I loaded this theme up for the first time, and I just hate that app, but that's another story. You'll find I'm very opinionated in my things, and it all comes down to keep it simple as possible and get out of your customer's way, right? Those are some of my founding tenets. But here, when I loaded up the theme for this first time, we'll see if it does it now. Let's just hit Control Shift. Yeah, you can see it there. It took us that little infinity point that's showing up while it loads things up and all that kind of stuff. Like it's there's too many steps there. I shouldn't have to see all that crap, right? It should just show up more easily. So and when I got to the product page, we've got this magnify thing going on, and there's that infinity thing showing up. We got this magnify thing going on, an expand button over here. As I'm hovering over things happen, and it just becomes distracting. Like I'm not a fan of this effect here, just because it's great when you're looking for the details of an engraved item or dishware and you want to see the pattern. But for a rod and reel, they can just click it, and now I can't click it. I got to go over here to click it to enlarge it. Where most people are used to, I can just click the image anywhere. So there's too many effects going on. And something else to think about here, and I'm getting into the details really quickly all of a sudden, I just realized. And the product page, by the way, is the most important page on your site, right? So that's why I always start by looking at the product page. And in this one here, me going through these images has no help at all. What I'm doing is, and this one is actually changing my selections. I didn't notice that till just now, based on the image, because these are variant level images. They're assigned to the variants. But I wouldn't change these by selecting this. And that's probably a theme does that by default. I don't like that behavior at all. I like the customer to be very aware of what they're doing. And I like the fact that there's a dark highlight so you know exactly which one you're picking. But the point I'm leading up to is, in your store, it looks to me like this product, this thumbnail picker down here, is not necessary. I would get rid of it because you're not looking through 5 pictures of one rod and reel from 5 different angles that talks about features and benefits. What you're doing is you're selecting product. Well, let the product selector select the product, and then just change the image to reflect which one they've picked, kind of thing, which looks like the same image over and over again here. So in your story, you need to decide, is this thumbnail thing helping or not? And the point, right, is reduce things that are unnecessary. Get out of your customer's way, right? Another real example of that here on the product page, there's this really cool thing over here where I can go back to casting rods. Oh, that's nice, right? Or I can scroll through them and look at all the different rods. Like, no one does that shit. It looks great. It seems cool, but no one does it, right? So get rid of it. Especially on mobile, right? When we start looking at your site on mobile, what happens when you build a site on desktop is you add more features. What happens when you build a site on mobile, you reduce things, right? You simplify things. And most of your customers are on mobile. So things that look great on desktop don't look so great on mobile. They get cluttered. Another example is the share buttons. No one ever shares things on websites. That used to happen in like 2008. It doesn't happen anymore. So just get rid of that extra clutter. Like this little ad. Oh God, like that's very 2006, right? And the reason it's very 2006 is it sounded like a great idea. The internet tried it out, and no one used them, right? So and they used them for the first year. But then they got used to it, and it got old, and like nobody's posted on Instagram, hey, I just found this great rod and reel, go check it out, right? We wish they did, but they don't. And I like the fact that, you got this, tab type functionality going on, but on this one here, the reviews, all right, so this is the Shopify product review app, which is, you should not use it all. And the reason for that is it's probably built into the theme. Most themes build it in, which is stupid. The reason you shouldn't use it is the Shopify product review app doesn't solicit reviews from your customers, right? Customers have to come here, click on the write a review button, and then write a review. But no one does that, right? You have to prompt them like, hey, 2 weeks after you ship their order, you're like, hey, how's your rod and reel working out for you? Why don't you leave us a review and give us some feedback kind of thing? And all the other, the paid review apps do that for you. I always recommend the Judge Me review app. I add it to every store, but you should get rid of the Shopify one and replace it. And the reviews tab doesn't trigger that on or off. So this tab is wired up wrong. I like recently reviewed products versus you may also like. I'm not a fan of you may also like stuff, but I like the recently reviewed. So that's not bad functionality. Now, and I like the fact you're showing the counter here. Right? I like the short description and then the long description down there here. Which shows by default. I like the fact you're showing delivery times. Now, I don't know if that changes per product. If it changes per product, that's awesome. If that's, generic for your store, then I would say you want to improve upon that and get more product level delivery times and expectations set. And there's ways we can do that. I don't, like I said, I don't know if you're doing it at the store level or at the product level. If it's the product level, it's great. If it's at the store level, not so good. Ask a question. That's probably some little app. I doubt that's important. I doubt most people use. Your goal here should be anytime your customer has a question, and you're fortunate when somebody asks a question, right? Because for every one person that asks a question, there's 10 or 100 that had the same question but didn't ask it. So anytime somebody asks a question, you should be adding that content. You shouldn't just answer the question. You should answer the question to them and then add that content to the website. So I'm a fan of heavy content, product content on a product page, and you can't have too much information on a product page is what I always say. Now, of course, you can get to the point where it's no longer relevant to the product, but like info, so you could do a lot better, by the way, on product content here for your product page. But the reality is, right, that's, you're not going to be able to do that right now because you're reselling other people's products, so you're using vendor photos, and you've got lots of products from other vendors, and you're probably using their description. But improving upon their content that they give you is going to help you out when you get to the point that you can do that, right? So you might want to say, I want to take my top 10 products and make my own video about those products, right? So let me give you a real example of why I say something like this. Let's actually look for the Bragg Polar Care Wave, which is a little device you use for post-surgery rehab kind of stuff. And now the reason I know this space is I built this website, and I built this website right here. So these top three here. So I know a lot about this space, right? But when we go into the shopping links, notice how My Cold Therapy, Ortho Bracing, Source Ortho, Supply Cold Therapy all have the exact same photo because they're reselling vendors' products, right? So, and that's the reality of when you're reselling other people's products is you're going to use the vendor photos. But imagine the world where the person comes in and says, the one that comes in and says, I'm not going to use the vendor photos. Then all of a sudden on this page where all the photos look identical or pretty identical, you stand out, right? Now this is also vendor photos because, like I said, I've built so many of these websites. I know what all the vendor photos. Not one of these companies has shot their own photo of this product. And I keep telling all my clients, the first one of you that does is all of a sudden going to stand out, right? Of you guys here, the first one that shoots their own photo and looks a little bit different is going to draw somebody's eye in. So they're not doing that today. So for you, I totally get where you're not going to have your own photography for all your products, but maybe for your top 10 you do. And you actually shoot some videos and make some infographics and things like that. And that's, you're doing that to differentiate yourself and stand out from the competition. So when people decide they want this, rod and reel, or if that's just a rod, right? Let's go to the shopping ads and show it there. Right? They all look the same, right? And this one's the worst, which I think is the photo you're using, by the way, because it's got the background color. It's a really thin photo. It's just awful. Sorry, I'm very frank about things. But imagine the one that stands out and actually has a lifestyle photo of you holding the rod and reel and smiling and with a fish or something. That person's going to stand out in this world right here. And this is your space, right? And no one is standing out right now. They all look identical. So creating your own photography and your own videos is a huge way to stand out in a space, which is hard, right? Because making your own content is very time intensive, but that's what all the successful brands do, right? If you're not making your own content and you're just if you're reselling other people's products, I'd say you have to make your own content to differentiate. Not for every product, and not the top quality stuff on day one, but the first person who takes their own photo and a lifestyle photo is going to stand out in this space. And why can't that be you, right? So, we're talking about the product here. We'll talk about your logo in a bit. So, there's some good stuff here, right? Some functionality. There's some effects in the JavaScript that's going on this site, and I'm not a fan of, but, we already talked about that. But on your product pages, you've got a good start of some photos and some content. I would encourage you to just keep doubling down and doing more and more of that, right? Because you want to differentiate yourself and stand out so that when people search, they find you at the top. When Google sees and I'm going to assume that this is the product copy given to you from the manufacturer, right? Now let's actually see. If I search for that, you don't even show up first. You show up second, right? So these guys here showed up first. Because you're using these guys have, is that their own copy? This seems to me to be not written by the manufacturer, and I don't know why I say that. Well, because it has a different tone than the stuff that I saw on your page. So they might be using the description elsewhere on this page or something that you're using on your page. And there's a video. Let's check that out. I don't think you can hear video in this recording, but I just want to see for a quick second who made the video. So 13 Fishing made the video. And that's these guys, right? So they made their own video, right? So I searched for the words on your website, and the guys that beat you were the guys making their own content, right? And I had no idea that was going to happen, right? I'm actually close to proving my point. So Google says, hey, these words here that we search for that are on your website, it gave you number 2 for that, right? You beat out Amazon, which is awesome. But number 1 it gave is that people made their own content about the same topic. That's how freaking smart Google is. It has figured out that we're searching for this exact rod and reel and said, these guys have unique content in that space. Therefore, I'm going to put them number 1, right? So that just reinforces what I'm saying is if you're going to be successful in this space, you're going to make your own content down the road. It's just a question of when you do that, right? Let me put it this way. And, I'm stating this as an absolute, which is, it's not an absolute, but, you're not going to be successful until you make your own content. Right? And that's where, if you listen to my podcast a lot, I talk about, and I try to state it as there's e-commerce stores and then there's brands, right? And the difference between an e-commerce store and a brand is a fountain of content and content creation. And anybody who's going to migrate from being an e-commerce store to a brand one of the things you're going to do as they do that is become experts in content creation. I'm huge on content, right? And it's not the only way to be successful, but it's the way that I espouse, because if you're like doing drop shipping and changing your products and, fly-by-night brands, there's nothing wrong with that if you're successful in that, but that's not building a brand, right? That's just, wash, rinse, repeat type e-commerce stuff. So, and I have the sense that you want to be a long, enduring company in this space and an expert, and I call that becoming a brand. Right? And one of the things you're going to do to become a brand is create content. So let's go back to our product page. I think we've talked about that enough. Now the second most important page, right, is this page right here. Whatever I get to when I click on this page here, right, which for you is a results page, a collection page. So once again, this is gratuitous, right? The developers who wrote this, like, oh, look, we can change the displays. This is great. Look at all the control we're giving to customers. Customers don't give a shit, right? They're not going to click those damn things. And it just takes up space and confuses people. Now, filters are really important. But the problem is you're using the filters that are built into Shopify. What you need to do is have a professional filter app, especially for your space. So let's just go to rods and reels. So one of the things that, that's a nicer page. I like the fact it's a page and not a collection, by the way. One of the things I was going to say is usually what I do with the top level pages on the nav is I make them point to a page, not to a collection, because in your store, what you're trying to, a lot of people talk about, I want to be 3 clicks to the add to cart button, right? And that works, that strategy, that best practice is applicable for someone who's building one of those websites that's going to be up for 5 days for a Facebook ad campaign. selling one product, right? They want to be 1 click, 3 clicks, 2 clicks to the add to cart. When someone's coming in, buying a rod and reel, which is their hobby and passion, right? They're a fisher person or a fisherman or fisherwoman, right? This is part of their personal brand and their personal identity, right? This is super important to them. You know, how many clicks it takes is unimportant. Does not matter. Don't think about that at all, right? What you need to think about is how informed and confident that person is on what they've added to their cart, right? So, and because of that type of mindset in my head, I hate quick view and I hate quick shop, right? Nobody should, on this page here, saying, I want to buy that and add it to their cart, right? They don't know enough about it, right? You know, your job is to educate them and walk them down the path, right? Imagine if you had a brick and mortar store. I don't know if you do, but let's just assume you don't for a second. Imagine if you had a brick and mortar store and somebody walked in and you had staff there. And they walk up to that person who just walked in and say, hello, welcome to our store. The first question they say is, hey, do you want to add the Akuma to your fin chaser, the Akuma fin chaser to your cart? They would never say that, right? They would start asking questions. They would say, hey, what are you here for today? Oh, you're looking for a new rod and reel. Well, what type of fishing do you do? What's important to you? Do you take it on planes or, whatever else kind of stuff? They'd ask 3, 4, 5 questions and then make a recommendation, right? So what you want to think about with your shopping experience is how do you ask 3, 4, 5, whatever the right number of questions is, and you don't pose them as questions, obviously, but you on this page here where I pick rods and reels, you make it a decision-making page, right? And this, by the way, this banner being so freaking tall is actually pissing me off, right? I have to scroll this far to see useful content, right? That's we can get rid of that easy. You can get rid of that easily, right? But this is great. What type of fish are you fishing for? That's a decision making. You're asking a question, right? You could have other questions here, like, maybe one thing is what type of fish you're fishing for. Maybe another criteria is, how cost, right? Shot by price. Maybe another one is, portability or flexibility or whatever, right? I like, and I'll give you an example here. Because we're going to talk about this site in another example here in a second also. So all they're selling, they sell one type of product, and it's old posters. And some of these are like hundreds of years old. It's a really cool site. Every one of these links takes you to the same products, right? But we just allow people to start their shopping in different ways, right? So some people may care about country of origin. I want to see Swiss posters, right? So that's question number 1. What country do you want your poster to be from? Or what language do you want it in? And then this is going to come up. I don't know why it's so slow. And then, so that, country of origin, by the way, is here in these filters right there. But maybe some people care more about the size. I got a really big space in my house I want to fill. But what happens is they see the same products no matter how they start their shopping experience. And then with this filter app, which is my next recommendation for you, then with this filter app, they get to ask the other questions. So we started by size, and now maybe I care about country. I want to see big posters from Russia, right? And there's only one of them, so that makes my choices easy. So let's just pick United States and Russia there, right? And now I got a few of them, and maybe, I want to see things that are about sports, right? So we're asking multiple questions or allowing the customer to answer multiple questions without even, specifically asking them. But they can start that shopping experience by whichever method's important to them, right? And what we did is when we built this site, we came up with more than this ways to start your shopping experience and more than this ways to filter. And then we just see what people clicked on. So we did this throw the spaghetti against the wall approach, and whatever sticks, we kept. So these, and then we changed the order of them by the what people use kind of thing, right? So point being for you, let's go back to your site. I think it was here, yeah. I love this. I would put this right at the top. I wouldn't have this thing in the middle. Like, what's the Shop Now button do? I already said I want a rod and reel. What is Shop Now going to do? Takes me to kayak fishing. Why kayak fishing, right? How do you know I want kayak? You don't. So my guess is that link is a mistake on your part. You probably meant it to go to all rods and reels. But if you did, I wouldn't have the banner. But if it was meant to go to all rods and reels, I would have this say, see all, right? Let the customer know more explicitly what that button is doing, right? But here, this is a good example of, this is like, doing size on the poster one. But are there other ways that people shop that are important also, right? And, what's important for you to figure out is what is important to your customers, right? A well-established brand in e-commerce, it's amazing how well they know their customers. And it's your job as a store owner to learn your customers. And the way you do that is by talking to them. Like if you have a brick and mortar store, absolutely fabulous. That's absolute gold. Or if you don't, going to shows and things like that, physically talking to people face to face is great. But you can also virtually talk to them through your website by just seeing what they do and what they click on. So back to this one here, this app, right? So you're using the filters that are built into Shopify, which are good. They're way better than they used to be, but they don't give you all of these parameters. And let's actually just clear them all so you can see, all the parameters here. We got all sorts of different categories and, lots of different ways they can do things. We bucketize things by how old they are and all sorts of good stuff, right? So this app here is called Boost Product and Filter, and it's really nice. And you probably need that in your store, right? And the way you know that is if you have like multiple criteria that are important to people. Like, are there, feminine versus masculine? That's obviously a feminine. Is that just for women? Or some just for men? Or is the length? Is the materials? Is the pound of fish that it supports? Like, I'm sure you got lots of criteria that people use and care about. And like I said, with this app, you can put it all out there, and then it shows you stats and says, all right, nobody clicks on this thing, so then you should remove it. But lots of people click on this thing, so then you move it up the list kind of thing. But a good filter app on your collection page is probably going to be really useful. And another thing here, so this is nice. You got 23 pages of stuff, so it tells you that's a lot of content, right? It's a lot of products you have. If you had 1 or 2 pages of products, 10 products, 20 products, you might not need a filter app. But if you have hundreds of products, then you probably need the filter app. So on your collection pages, I think that would be an important thing. Now, there's also the trying to educate people here, and then also trying to get them the shopping experience. That there's a challenge in how to do that right, and there's no perfect answer to that. One of the things I've done before is, and I'll show you this example here. It's like some people know what they want. You just got to get out of their way, right? Other people, they want their handheld, right? So in bottle filling stations, what we did is, all they sell is water fountains, right? And usually it's like gyms and schools that are buying these things. And sometimes, if it's like the school district, they know a lot about it because they got a lot of schools. But if it's a gym, they may not know because they only have one gym and one water fountain. So they need education. So the school guy comes in, and it's just like, all right, I want an indoor one. And then we show them all the options for indoor. Well, there's a combo, a countertop, an in-wall. I want a combo, right? So we're not educating them as they go. And here's that same Boost product and filter app, product and search app, or search and whatever it's called. It's by Boost. But we're not educating them at all, right? We give them all the options, and they make their own decision. But we have the exact same experience in the buyer's guide, but all we do is we educate the customer at every step along the way. So this is like, hey, do you want indoor? You don't have to explain indoor versus outdoor, really, right? We don't have to do a lot of text around that, but we do explain the residential one. But when I click on indoor, we do explain what is a combo, what is an in-wall, what is a surface mount, what is a countertop, because the gym owner who only has one gym and one water fountain may not understand these differences. And then when they click on the combo, we're going to say, hey, here's the original, the enhanced, here's some features and benefits between the two, here's features that people care about, all that kind of stuff. So we're educating them along the way. Exact same shopping experience as this link over here, but we built out more content around it because some people want to take the slow path and get educated, and other people are like, get out of my way, I know what I want, right? So we're accommodating both those people at the same time. Buyer's guides are super valuable, right? So what I see here is, trying to do some education, and you might be doing this for SEO purposes. I'm not a fan of that kind of stuff for a bunch of reasons. But I am a fan of educating your customer. Huge fan of that. But there's a right time and a right place for that. And
a bifurcated experience where you have buyer's guides side by side with your browse experience is a great way to do that, right? But your collection page, there's a lack of consistency here between this page, which is a collection, this page, which I said I like the fact it's a page, which I stand by. I don't like the fact it's throwing everything at me, right? It's too confusing. It's not focused. I'm trying to see if you have what I absolutely hate, which is, so here we got blog articles. I have already said I want rods and reels, and I'm being shown what I'm going to guess is most recent blog articles. When I said I want a rod and reel, why am I being talked to about kayak fishing, right? Get out of your customer's way. And I also, I'm very opinionated. I'm sorry about that. I also believe that the purpose of blog articles is to bring people to your website. It is not to engage people already on your website, right? So you're doing blogs for SEO purposes, and they should be landing pages, but you shouldn't try to bring people to your site and then engage them in the blogs, unless it's very specific and tactical, right? Like you may do a piece of content around a specific rod or reel and do a review of it in a blog article. Well, if that's the case, I wouldn't, on that product page, point the person to that blog article. I would actually embed that content into that product page, right? So reuse that content in multiple places. But this page is very shotgunny in that it doesn't know what it's doing, right? So you need to know what your page is doing. And in your shopping experience, so by the way, I like the fact that your menu is all just shopping experiences. I love that, right? There's no about us, there's no contact us. It's shop, shop, shop. That's absolutely right. But each step in your shopping experience, right, needs to be a decision point. And you want each page to be as few decisions as possible with as tight of a data set as possible. So when you pick on rods and reels, let's actually pick on fishing. I've talked about rods and reels enough. I haven't looked at this page yet, so we'll see what it does. So that goes straight to a collection page, right? So I said fishing gear, and from that, I don't get to make any more decisions. Now I'm just picking products. There's no decisions to be made on this page except product. And when I'm picking a product, I'm making 17 decisions at the same time, right? So for example, let's say I'm looking for a fishing vest. Well, why can't I see all the fishing vests side by side? And maybe I can here, right? I can't. Oh, we're fishing gear. Maybe fishing vests are accessories or something, right? But, so what I like to do is this mega menu you've got going on here, and I don't know, by the way, if this is duplicated over here or not. That would be confusing to the customer. Tackle, backpacks, Okay, so you are showing it both places. That's good. Now, Plano, I don't know if that's the same thing as over here or not. That's confusing to me. Am I making a different decision here than I am here, right? Fishing pliers, I see the same thing. Tackle, backpacks, but Plano Tackle, is that a brand? And why am I filtering by brand all of a sudden so quickly without, So here, if this is brand and product type, I'm making two decisions at the same time. And this is my point of one decision at a time. What you want to say is, all right, hey, make your decision on your product type, or make your decision on whatever the right thing at the first step is, right? For some people, it's brand. For some people, it's product type. For other people, it's size or whatever. Whatever the right first step is here, let's make that decision. And right now, it looks like product type. So then you make the product type decision. And then the next thing may be, hey, let's make a decision about brands, right? What brand do you care about? Like I said, here they're making two decisions at the same time, and the customer may not know that, right? And I may be wrong in the assumptions I'm making about the content on your site, so apologies for that. But you may have, one page at the top level. Never go to a collection from the top level unless there's only 3 products in it, kind of thing. And the apparel one, this is a great example where these would be on, when I get to whatever I click here should just say these exact same things, right? This page usually ends up looking identical in clicks or links as the mega menu, right? You're just duplicating that. because that's a great way to start your decision-making process. And then you may, from this page, go straight to a collection page or another decision-making page, right, which is a list of collections page. I'm just curious now, if I click on this Shop Now link, does it take me to the same thing the other one did? Yeah, that's awful, right? So the apparel Shop Now takes me to the same kayak thing that the tackle or rod, whichever one I clicked before does. So what you have there is you have the same. You probably have one template that you're using on both of them, where you probably need to make a separate template for each. So the clicks and the links can be specific to the topic, that they did. Because what I usually tell people that we all look at Amazon and go, oh, they're the world's #1 e-commerce site, which they undoubtedly are, and like we're going to do whatever they do. So what Amazon does is confuse the shit out of customers, right? Amazon is not a good shopping experience. People go to Amazon not because of the shopping experience on the site and that it helps them make the right decision. They go to Amazon because I think 3 things. 1, they have everything for sale in the world, nearly. 2, they have overnight free shipping, free in that I paid for it, right, kind of thing. But they have a great shipping policy. And 3, they have an even better return policy, right? Everybody goes to Amazon for those reasons, not because they're a great shopping experience. So our goal in competing against Amazon, which you absolutely are, is to differentiate yourself from Amazon and be very concise about the shopping experience. This is going to make sense why I'm bringing up Amazon here, right? So Amazon can't meet you at the door, right? That analogy I use when somebody walks and you start asking them questions. They can't do that for fishing rods and reels, right? They have too many products, right? So what Amazon does is they do the spaghetti thing, right? They throw every product in the world in their store and show it to people. And then when you land on any product page, they show all the other products are related to it. You may also like and all those kind of things. And they're doing that because they don't have a curated shopping experience. They're not meeting you at the door and asking you the first question and then following it up with the second question and guiding you one step, one decision at a time down the shopping experience. So, and they can't do that. Right? It's impossible for them to do that with all the products that they have and every category in the world. And that's where you get to differentiate and stand out against them, because you can have a curated shopping experience where you understand the customer intimately well in this area, and you can walk them through that experience, right? One step at a time. And the point being, every step they take, you should respect that, right? Where Amazon never respects the steps you take. So think about it, people moving down the funnel, right? If they move down a step, don't take them back up to the step above. Right? Respect the decisions they're making. Where Amazon would, on any page in the thing, say, hey, how about kayak fishing, right? That kind of thing. You should never do that, because you have a curated shopping experience, and you know that whatever page someone's on, it's probably the right page for them at this time. Where Amazon, you can enter anywhere, and you can enter your site anywhere, but trust your customers and trust your shopping experience if you build it out the right way, and respect the decisions they're making, and let them move down the funnel. And let them come back up whenever they want. They know how to hit the home button and that kind of thing. So that's, I think, enough about those things. So here, and I'm being really nitpicky when I say this, but those icons are all the exact same, so they add no value, kind of thing. This you see the hover effects. It's kind of busy, right? And I'm not doing this on the phone, but I would bet you that this is okay on desktop, although it's too busy for me. I don't like it. So let me say it another way. The goal of this store is to get people to check out. And that's all that fucking matters, right? And second to that is collecting email address. That's the only things you care about. Either they're checking out or you're getting their email address, right? Your job here is not to impress them with your website design, is not to impress them with the technology and the glitz and the flash and all that kind of the fancy stuff. Now, you have to have a professional looking website. I'm not saying it should look like crap, but a lot of companies build websites that I call billboards, right? The call to action is to, educate people on the brand. Your call to action, buy, right? And if you focus on that buy thing, you get rid of all the flashy, glitzy stuff, and the fancy effects and the flyouts and all that kind of stuff, because if I'm GE or something. People, nobody's buying off the GE website. They're coming to learn about the company, and you actually want to impress them because there's nothing else for you to do, right? There's no call to action, right? If someone's researching GE because they're going to interview with the company, like you want to have gratuitous animations and stuff like that, and hover effects over every person where they've it does something when you hover over their photo, and there's nothing wrong with that stuff, but it's distracting or engaging. But that's not the point of your site. Your point is not to engage them in your website design. Your point is to get them educated about what to buy and help them check out as easily as possible. Now, what I haven't looked at yet as I talk about all this is your cart button, right? I would only do that if you absolutely must have to by law. If you can get away with just having that in your copy somewhere, I would do that. I would not give it. They just said, I want that, and you're telling, really? You're stupid, You shouldn't get that. It's poisonous, right? But let's see if it adds it to my cart. I don't like this cart here, the fly-out type of stuff. I like a page one. So these buttons become confusing. I would get rid of them. I would just have the checkout. Let's go and view your cart. You're promoting stuff, which everybody does that. You don't promote it here. I wouldn't do the estimated shipping thing. It's just confusing. I don't like this wording at all. Complete your cart. You're saying you've missed something. Customer, you are wrong. You need to complete things. You may say that, you may also like, kind of thing. But I would make this smart, right? So a lot of people just put in some tool that says, hey, here's other things you might want to buy, right? And that's not smart, right? And when Amazon does that, it actually is smart because everybody in the world shops on Amazon, and so they have so much data about customers, right? I'm gonna guess you don't have enough customers in checking out to actually know that of the million people that buy this, 47% of them also buy this, right? You may have 5 people that buy this, or maybe even 100, but you don't have a million, right? So the data that you're collecting really isn't as relevant as when you have literally a million people buying a product, or 100,000 kind of thing. So a lot of that algorithmic stuff sounds great, but most stores don't have the volume to it actually to be accurate. So one of the things I did in a store is we do the recommendations, but we're really smart about it. So this site just sells board games, if it ever comes up. My internet's slow today. It rained here recently. Whenever it rains, my internet's slow, which just drives me crazy. But then in this store, so they sell board games, right? Everything's just board games. And board games, have genres, and we call them collections here. So what we did is, let's just go to Cholula Wars. And I'm going to pick on one of these products. So now we've designed this website in such a way that we know that this product is in the Cholula Wars collection, right? There's the taxonomy. And we actually did is we put the Cholula Wars in the product name right here. This is actually in the product name. And then we built a collection with anything that begins with Cholula Wars. So when I got to this page, I built in some code that says, hey, shop all, because what will happen is they might have 5 products, because these guys are selling Kickstarter board games. And if you've ever been to Kickstarter, there'll be like 3 or 4 or 5 different packages. You can get the A package, B package, and they'll have all of them on their website. So we'll tell them here, like, hey, there's more Cholula War games. You want to see the other ones to see what they all look like? And if we click on that, you'll see a collection that shows all Cholula War games. And you can pick any one that you want and add multiple of them to the cart, because sometimes this map goes with this add-on and all that kind of stuff. So that we merchandise at this collection level, or cross-merchandise at the collection level, and let them see everything that is from that collection. And we do the same thing down here where, you may also like, these are only Cholula War games. And if a given game's product page that I'm on isn't part of a collection, we don't show anything there, right? Up here, we don't show this link if it isn't part of a collection. Now, if we add this one to the cart, what we do in the cart is we say, hey, and we did this because we saw that people who bought one game from a collection also bought other games. We had data that backed this up, right? But here what we also do is we say, hey, you may also like is only games from that collection. Now, if I go to the home page and click on another one of those collections at the bottom that I clicked on, right? Let's just pick Zombicide. And pick one of these collections and add it to the cart. What you'll see, or we should see, is now down here we should see Zombicide and Cthulhu Wars show up. Yeah, and we're seeing Zombicide games and Cthulhu War games show up. So our cross merchandising is very specific, very literal to the content that's in the cart. So that's just an example of doing cross merchandising. We were on the cart page here. Is that here? Yeah. Doing cross merchandising more smart. Now it takes work to set that up, right? But that's part of that. You really have to know your customers, and once you know your customers, you can build code and automations around that knowledge of your customers to build a bespoke shopping experience that is more relevant. Which is, there's a cart and a horse here thing, but it's one of those. It's iterative and it builds over time. And that's how you differentiate from the competition, right? So this cart, so you have, that must be custom code you have that's actually checking out your, let's actually see if I put in free 15. Yeah, so that didn't do anything, right? That's very confusing. And what I expected was, that code's invalid, put it in another one or something, some sort of messaging. So this is probably just some hokey cheap thing that doesn't add any value on this page, just like the shipping stuff. Where in checkout, if I put in free 15, yeah, so you need to put your logo up here. We're going to talk about brands in a minute. But if I put in free 15 over here, I should get an error message, right? That's not a valid code. Yeah, enter a valid discount. So, there's less functionality on the cart page, so why put it on the cart page? And there's actually reasons why you should, by the way. But you need to have that complete experience behind that if you're going to do it. So now let's actually talk about your brand. Like I said, you're missing the logo there. So here's your logo. Or I had it open before. Where'd it go? And there's nothing wrong with this logo, right? I'm not going to critique the logo. I'm just going to critique the implementation of the logo. So this is a great logo at this size, right? There's a lot of detail. I totally get what it's about. By the way, it seems to me that you're more freshwater. I don't know fishing at all. This looks more saltwater to me. But that's, I'm just being really nitpicky when I say that. But here, this logo is not easy to understand, right? And when it's up here, it's impossible to understand. So what you need to do, or you don't have to do this, but what I like to do is have different levels of the logo at different, for different pixel sizes. So a real example here, what I would do for this logo here, which I think is 155 pixels, which is here, that version of the logo, I'd probably get rid of the gradation on the blue. So it's one consistent solid color. And I would probably remove this water element, this water element, this water element, and the seagulls, and maybe even, some detail in the fish, so it's less muddy when I see it here, right? I would also prefer to have a horizontal version of the logo instead of a square version. I usually do a horizontal version, a portrait version, or landscape and a portrait version, and a square version, and just have them available and use them at the right time in the right place. Because if we go into the mobile version, let's just refresh the page. I don't know what this gray bar was from and why that's there. That's just distracting. And this takes up a lot of vertical space, which is really valuable on this page. And I don't like that drop-down effect, right? That fancy animation, right? When I refresh the page, where we open up the this announcement bar up here, that's just gratuitous animation. Where and the reason I don't like that is, let's say this page loads up and I like that Shop Now link, but by the time I go to click it, it's moved. Like, that kind of stuff. Those are annoying. But here, this very valuable branding element is really, muddy and confusing, and you're just making a
logo version that was designed to fit in that space. So, more landscape, more horizontal, with less detail in it, so it doesn't confuse things as much. That's just a nice way to clean up and tighten your brand a little bit. And then also your colors here, right? This blue, this gold. I can see some of that in here, but I would just be really clear about defining your color palette. Let me show you an example of this. Let's go to Fine Linen and Bath and go to the brand guidelines page. So what I always do is I make this page here. I did a podcast episode on this, you might have heard. And we define the color palette, right? And, here's the shades of gray that we use. Here's the shades of green and these different, tints of purple kind of thing. And then we only use these colors everywhere, right? And that consistency is one of those things that builds your brand. And what I mean by that is, for you, you're a blue and gold color scheme, which makes total sense, right? For fishing and outdoors, the blue and gold makes total sense to me. But let's go to the desktop view so we can see that. I got this gray bar here, which might be okay, and I guess that's the one on mobile that's not showing on mobile. But down in the footer, we have the gray footer, right? Not the blue or gold. I got a gray background here, not the blue or gold. My buttons here are black, but when I hover, I get the blue. So, I would remove that, the black, and I have more blue and gold. And then here, I've got my chat button. I would make sure that's got the right brand colors also. Now, you don't want everything the exact same color, and that's why you'll have different shades or tints of the blue and gold. And here we might use, a lighter blue so it's not as dominant as this blue here. But there's also a lack of consistency in things. Like, I've got this search button up here. This is called the pill effect, where it's, a half circle. But down here, this button is a quarter circle, and it's like a 25 pixel or whatever radius. And this one has a white outline button, and this one doesn't have a white outline button, or it may actually, but it doesn't look like it does because it's on a white background, right? But this one on a colored background, you see the outline. And then down here, I got black buttons, so they're different, right? And different buttons can have different colors for different reasons. But I don't see the logic. I don't see there being reasons here. I think they're just different because they weren't brought together. So one of the powerful things when you start doing branding, and the game steward is a fabulous example of that. We spent a ton of time on this site. And it takes time and energy, which is money. But we made everything map to the brand, really, really well, even with the custom icons and all that kind of stuff. Everything is, and they're blue and gold. It's a darker blue kind of thing, but everything is done completely as consistently as possible as we could, and that makes the site and the brand more holistic. And the thing is, like, your customers, even if they don't consciously know it, like when you go to an Allbirds or a Gymshark where they've done everything to their brand, nothing looks like it was bolted on or added in. And, you are bolting on apps, whatever app you're using here for chat and all that kind of stuff. But you got to go into those apps and make sure you customize them to map to your branding as well as possible. I even do it where, whatever your gold is for this gold here, I would make sure that this gold or yellow maps to your review stars. And we might pick a slightly different tint, but I make sure they're exactly in the same, spectrum of gold or yellow. And maybe they are. I don't know, right? But so I got one blue here, and I think a third blue here, and maybe those are all in your brand. But I just make sure you define that really well and then implement it everywhere. And another thing is like this hover. I've lost my contrast there, right? So you're probably using one of your brand blues, but that blue on that blue, the blue on the hover text on the background, it's unreadable kind of thing. So in that case, I might actually just make it go to black or a dark blue that has contrast with the one underneath. But those little details of color and defining your color palette and respecting your brand help you develop a brand from just an e-commerce store, right? I'm 54 minutes into this. I'm going to start wrapping it up.
just because I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of this when we get talking together kind of thing. But I just like to, like I said, do a data dump to start off with. So the way I'm going to end it is I'm going to go into a product because I want to point out one other thing I noticed earlier. And, and it comes down to these gratuitous effect things, right? So it's being too busy. So here, I like the fact that this thing pops up, right? Add to cart. Now, I wouldn't add to cart here. I would take them back up to the top because most of your products, and let's actually go to one where that's really the case, most of your products, there's decisions to be made. So if I go into this product, I don't have to make one decision, but let's say I pick 7 feet. Now I go down to the bottom and I add to cart. Well, I've added the 7-foot one. Well, maybe that was the wrong one. I don't know. That's why I would have that button take them back to the top, right? And that's what I do in most of my themes. And we call it back to top so that they can see, because some of your products have 3 or 4 decisions or 2 or 3. We want them to make sure they're making the right decision, right? Always make sure they're educated and making the right decision. So I like the fact that this pops up, especially when you have long content product pages, like I mentioned, how I like those. But one of the things I noticed, like I scroll down to the bottom, and then that's gone, right? And like, well, where'd it go? I want to go back to the top. Well, now I have to realize, if I scroll, that shows back up again. Like just a little detail like that. To me, it's those kind of details when you see them and notice them and then fix them. Those are the things that really take your store experience and help tweak it. What I do for some clients is I add Hotjar in, which records screen things. And if you just watch screen recordings for 2 hours of your customers, like I did it for FL&B, I showed that story a little bit ago. I watched it for 2 hours. It was like their Cyber Monday stuff. And I came up with 10 little details on their shopping experience that we think have made, each one has made just a little improvement, but when we add all 10 together, it makes a major improvement by just watching how people shop and where they get confused. And this kind of thing is the kind of thing you'll notice. Like people, you'll see them like, they'll hover down here, they're like, where'd that button go? And then they're like, oh, okay. And then they'll click it and they'll do the kind of thing. And then so here, back to this busy page thing. I've got this hovering thing down here, which doesn't stay the whole way like it should, right? And then I got the header one that pops up. So I got a thing at the bottom flashing at me, and I got a thing at the top flashing at me. It's just like I said, too busy, and people have to be really comfortable with your site and understand it really well. There's a learning curve just to the site, right? And you want to reduce that learning curve as much as possible. Remember, that's a soccer mom analogy all the time. Assume that your customer is driving a car, looking at your site on a phone while screaming at the kids in the back. And if you put yourself in that mindset, you're going to simplify lots and lots of things and get rid of a lot of gratuitous things, right? So I think that's going to give you enough to chew on. Hopefully you'll watch this video all the way to this point. Hopefully you'll watch it before we meet next week. But we'll just continue the discussion from there. So instead of me walking through all this, with you, on the call, you get to absorb it in your own time and pace, and then we can go from there. All right, thanks.